Naukri.com is a very special company. It is one of those companies whose products are used by practically every other company, large or small. I can't think of a single company that doesn't use Naukri.com. And today we have the privilege of sitting down with the MD and CEO of not just Naukri.com, but 17 other companies, including Jeevan Sathi, including Shiksha.com, and many others. We're going to sit down today with Hitesh Oberoi and find out the inside story of how Naukri.com reached the scale and impact that it carries today. So let's dive right in. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll jump right in.
Sure.
What is top of mind for you right now at this
point?
Top
of mind for me right now at this point in time.
Business, work, life, family, anything.
Okay. On the business side, see, I'll tell you what's been happening in our business is that Naukri is our largest business, but Naukri has been slow. Growth has been slow for the last 3-4 quarters because the IT industry has slowed down. The non-IT part of the economy is doing really well, but IT jobs are a large part of the white-collar job economy in this country. IT grew like fire for 2 years after COVID, but the last 4 quarters have been slow because of what's happening in the US. The big tech companies there have, if you may have read in the newspapers, laid off a lot of people, and demand has been iffy in the economy. And Indian IT services companies are more indexed to what happens in the US economy than to what happens in the Indian economy. So the startup market was also slow, has also been slow for the last 12 to 18 months because there was so much activity and market had become irrational. And now things have also corrected. Many big startups are actually in trouble. So that's also affected hiring to some extent. So, but early signs of things coming back in Naukri. The other businesses have been great.
Yeah,
real estate is doing
tell us
really
about
well.
it.
So Zomato has been on a tear, as you know.
Of course. Blinkit more so than Zomato.
Blinkit
I'm hearing.
more than Zomato. Yeah. And by the way, nobody believed in Blinkit when it happened.
Until a year ago.
Exactly.
Until 6 months ago, they were.
Everybody wrote it down. क्या बकवास है यार, कोई नहीं लेगा 10 मिनट के लिए, किसको चाहिए? People can
unit economics, this, that.
Exactly, so many things. So that's been a surprise, but we are not complaining. I'm just telling you what is top of my mind. So we are trying to figure out how to grow Naukri irrespective of what happens to the economy and to IT services. So we've been doing a lot of things. We've acquired a few startups in the last few years. We are building new revenue sort of pools. We've experimenting a lot with Gen AI. Yeah. And we're investing heavily in data science and machine learning. That talent is hard to get. So these are the kind of things which we've been thinking about for the last couple of quarters now. Otherwise, all good, yeah.
But do you think job search as a concept is going to be there in the future where, a student or a job seeker actually, floats his CV and, people, is that process going to stay the same?
Yeah, I think so. And it's been like this for so many years now. And the truth is that in a country like India, there are 140 crore people. And even today, when you post a job on Naukri, a regular job, right, you get tons of applications. And it's still very hard to get the right person. So on the one hand, an average job on Naukri may get 500 CVs, 800 CVs. But to make that one hire is still very hard. Because unfortunately in India, not everybody goes to Masters Union. Right? So it's hard to find people with the right skills. And often what educational institutions end up teaching is not what the market needs. Absolutely. Disconnect है वहाँ पर. Right? वो कुछ और पढ़ा रहे हैं, कुछ और चाहिए. So companies have to hire and therefore they often end up hiring for attitude and थोड़ा सा aptitude and then they train and it takes a while before the person becomes productive. See, when the market is down, of course, everything is easy. But India is an economy which is going to grow at 6-7% per annum going forward. मैंने तो देखा है in the past that whenever India GDP growth hits 6%, people become hard to find. Very, very hard to get good people. So especially in the new emerging sectors. Because now if you want to hire somebody in, let's say, construction, maybe you'll be able to get someone easily, or in textiles. But if you want to hire somebody in AI and machine learning, it's not going to be easy. If you want to hire somebody in analytics, not easy. If you want to hire somebody in electric vehicles, not easy. So in the newer areas, people are till a few years ago, it was hard to get even digital talent. People who really understood digital marketing, branding, SEO, SEM, app development were hard to get. Ab mil jate hain. But there was a point in time. Even today, good product managers are hard to get. Right?
But so when we float an ad on a job portal, right, we get 1,000, as you said, CVs.
Correct.
And then there's one person's job to just sift through the CVs, another person's job to schedule the interviews, all of that process. How do you see that process evolving?
So I can tell you what's happening in our company. There are a bunch of people working on sourcing automation. So part of the team, the data science team, का main काम क्या है? कि यार, one of the big problem statements is, you post a job, you get 500 CVs, 50 are relevant, right? Can you get those 50 out quickly? Can you automatically call them and line them up for an interview? That's sourcing automation. right? It should actually starts with the JD. Job description आपको मिल गया, आप खुद ही ढूंढ लो through the software, find the right people. Because we have a database product also, and we have a job listing product also. So job listing क्या होता है, you put it on the site, people apply. So from there, can you narrow it down to the people who are relevant? And from the database, can you search for the people who are relevant to that job and automatically reach out to them? And then the ones who are interested, you line them up. I think it's only a matter of time because a lot of this stuff gets automated.
And you can even go one step ahead, which is, you know, that someone in a company started looking for a job.
Yeah.
So for that company, you can already start finding a replacement automatically. You can do all of. But you know, one thing I'll tell you, much like UPI, I think India, the Naukri.com experience, at least for a company, is much better than a Monster.com experience in the US. Right? I mean, the kind of prediction or the kind of data liquidity that is there, right? It's always there.
Yeah.
The US, it's incredibly hard.
Is it?
You know? And LinkedIn, of course, has done a little bit. But what do you think about LinkedIn? Do you think that's a bus that...
We've been watching LinkedIn for almost 14, 15 years now. And from the very beginning, we've thought of LinkedIn as competition, right? Of course, they used to operate in a very different segment. Even today, they operate in a very different segment. They are more about passive job seekers. They're more about headhunting. They're also slightly more premium in terms of the audience and they cater to. But, you know, they're not going away. You know, they're here for good. And in fact, now they're owned by Microsoft.
Yeah.
So kahin nahi jayenge. Till the time they were a startup, they were still, pata nahi chalega, nahi chale. But now they're not going away. And we've also been very clear about one or two other things. We said, yeah, we are not a networking platform like they are. So that's how they started. So we don't want to be a LinkedIn even. Right? So many people say, yaar, tum ye kyun nahi kar rahe ho, kyun nahi kar rahe hain? Yeah, hame nahi karna because that's not our strength. That's not our forte. Yeah, we want to keep the platform simple and easy to use so that you can get people you want fast and quickly and, you know, lots of them and cheaply. And, you know, that's our differentiator.
Correct.
We don't want to become a Me Too of LinkedIn. Right? So we've been investing in growing our platform. We see them as competition. We see Indeed as competition. We see a bunch of other players, etc., etc. And we have managed to hold our own. And it's been many years now. And I just hope that it sort of continues that way.
Yeah, I mean, the number of CVs there, it's just, it's a crazy number. Huh? Yeah. So one time I have a story about Naukri.com. So Naukri.com had come to my father's company once to sell, right? And we are banias, right? So we don't want to buy anything. So we're always looking for reasons to say no. And so this guy comes and he says, I said, we have to recruit faculty, professors, PhDs, that you will not have. You are more in the IT side, you're more in the sales side, all of that. He's like, no, sir, we have. तो मैंने कहा दिखाओ. He's like, अभी सर मेरा time हो रहा है. Actually मेरे को कहीं जाना है next meeting में, कल आता हूँ मैं आपके पास. So the guy came back the next day and he brought with him like a list of like all the possible PhD CVs and he said, मैं आपके लिए vice chancellor भी ढूंढ के ला सकता हूँ. And then he inputted vice chancellor as a keyword and he found me 10 CVs. Then I was like, okay, now it makes sense. Now it was very hard for me to say no. The question I'm trying to get at is that how have you built a tremendous sales culture, right? I've not seen a better sales culture in any other organization in India than at Naukri. How did you nurture that?
For this, we have to go back 20 years, 24 years. So in the early days, see, today it's a very different world. There are startups, there's funding, there's venture. You guys have grown up in this world, right? 25 years ago, nobody had heard of venture capital. So when we raised money, even had not heard of venture capital till a few months before that.
One of the first companies to raise VC in India.
One of the first companies to raise venture capital at that time. And within 3 months I was raising venture, within 1.5 months I was raising venture capital, all funding dried up. Because there was a dot-com bubble in the US which burst in 2000. And all the venture capitalists left the country. India was tiny. There were just 2 million people on the internet. And there were no mobile phones. There were no smartphones. So you could only access the internet through a desktop. And very few people had access to desktops. Because desktops were expensive. Even at that time, 50,000 rupees ka tha ek desktop. Right? At that time. So how many people could afford desktops? So all these venture capitalists, they funded 20, 30, 40 companies and then they all left. So we raised 7 crores. At that time.
From who was the fund?
ICICI Ventures.
Oh wow, okay.
Right. And उसमें से हमने like everybody else was going crazy around us, spending money on newspaper ads, ये वो, तो हमने भी 2-3 crore ऐसे ही waste कर दिए. हमने office बना लिया fancy सा, उसमें 1.5 crore लग गए interiors में. We took the building on rent and we spent some 70 lakhs on newspaper ads. Nothing happened to our business. हमने कहा यार ये तो चलेगा नहीं. And the money also didn't come in one go. It was supposed to come in tranches. तो पहले वो 3 crore दे रहे थे, फिर 2 crore, फिर 2 crore. बोला you meet your business plan only you get money.
तो next वाला tranche आएगा.
So we said यार ये तो चलेगा नहीं and कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा. Now our business is what is called a marketplace. It's an aggregator business. It's a network effect business. So when we get more jobs, we get more job seekers. And when we get more job seekers, more people get hired through us. When more people get hired through us, they tell other job seekers. So then we get even more job seekers. So it's a network effect business.
Correct.
Now at that time, nobody in India understood how the internet worked. Right? हमने कहा कैसे लेके आए companies को? Right? We were getting a few jobs, but they were it was a small number. And people were not willing to pay online.
Correct.
कुछ था ही नहीं, e-commerce कुछ था नहीं. And even corporate departments don't have credit cards, वो सब कुछ था ही. So I we have to go to people, right, and educate them on, and we were very cheap compared to newspapers, because the main sort of way to hire people at that time was either through recruitment consultants, which were expensive. They used to charge 1 month of gross annual salary, and newspapers ads, which was super expensive, right? They used to cost in lakhs, at least the big ads. क्लासिफाइड से कोई हायर होता नहीं था छोटे वाले से. सो क्या हम तो बहुत ही सस्ते हैं, हम तो बेच रहे थे 6,000 रुपये पर ईयर, 300 रुपये पर लिस्टिंग, दैट काइंड ऑफ प्राइसिंग. बट nobody knew about us. There was no awareness. And so we decided we have to go to the market and educate people, HR managers. HR managers were, of course, reasonably well qualified. Most of them were from, MBAs and so on. इनको बताना पड़ेगा. So that's how it all started. And we started by hiring a couple of people in Delhi. And I started going to the market. I was also very young at that time. So मैंने कहा यार जाके देखते हैं क्या होगा. And we were surprised by what we found also. Like Nestle की बड़ी fancy corporate building होती थी यहाँ पे in Gurgaon. अभी भी है that building. And at that time it was one of the better buildings because there were very few buildings. Now can you imagine the entire Nestle office in that multinational big building? There was one PC which was connected to the internet.
And this is Nestle.
There had a lot of PCs, but there was only one PC on the internet, which was actually in the IT guy's
Department,
office. HR को तो था ही नहीं. Calcutta में तो they were still working on manual typewriters, not even electronic typewriters. वो तो manual typewriter करके अपने वो कर रहे थे. So हमने कहा यार इनको तो समझाना पड़ेगा, बैठ के दिखाना पड़ेगा, and कैसे करना है.
Correct.
And they were not used to the idea of posting a job, opening, filling up stuff. वो तो newspaper के कुछ करते थे, design बना के भेजते थे through agency. फिर यार ये तो बिल्कुल ही अलग गेम है. And companies did not have big recruitment teams. Right? Because they used to either go to, outsource to newspaper advertising or mostly work through consultants. So we started calling them up and say, let's give us a meeting. ये वो तुम जाते थे, समझाते थे. And then they would require a lot of handholding to even get online and to use the internet. And then sometimes they would get flooded with CVs. They would not know what to do with those CVs. And sometimes they would not get response because they would not post a job properly. So we used to tell our sales guys, we had a few people to start with, and said, yaar dekho, firstly, all of us have to be in the market. Right? Office में कोई नहीं बैठेगा.
That's a big thing.
That's a very big thing in a startup. And I used to sort of say, I'm available 24/7. I used to travel 12 days because after a while we opened offices. I used to travel 12 days a month. Whenever I used to travel, I used to make 4 sales calls every day, at least with the sales team. And then in the evening, party with them, sit with them, chat with them, do all that, train them, because they were also uninformed about how to use the internet. Right? And we couldn't invest in like sales training, itne paise थे नहीं, right? Then खुद ही, you have to sort of learn by doing. I used to sort of end up, when I travel, make sales calls, and in Delhi, whenever a good meeting was set up, I would go with them. That's how people got trained also, in the field. Because they would observe and get trained. Correct. Right? Then they understood यार कि यार कोई बात नहीं यार आधा घंटा बैठना है रिसेप्शन पे तो बैठना है यार 1 घंटे बैठना है तो बैठना है और फिर भी मीटिंग कैंसिल होगी नो प्रॉब्लम और अगर शाम को 6 बजे मीटिंग है तब भी जाना है जब भी मिल जाए. So that is one thing I sort of we taught everybody. Second thing we told them is यार कुछ तो चेक लेके आओ यार even if 350 रुपये का कुछ तो बेच के आओ. So once a customer is in the system, then we can always figure out how to grow the customer, upgrade him, sell more stuff to the customer. But वो आया ही नहीं तो फिर क्या चांस ही नहीं है. सो यार कुछ लेके तो आओ यार कुछ, मतलब चाहे वो 300 रुपये हो और 6,000 रुपये तो बहुत अच्छा है बिकॉज देन वी हैव मेनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज, राइट? बिकॉज इफ यू सेल वन लिस्टिंग, if that listing doesn't work, then he may not come back. But if you sell at least 5 or for 3 months or for 6 months, then there are many opportunities. Because it's not guaranteed that every time you post a job, you'll be able to hire a person. So that's the second thing. The third thing was, boss, you are in charge of everything. Right? और कोई सर्विस अलग डिपार्टमेंट नहीं होगा because we didn't have people at that time, nor did we have resources. Now, if the customer requires training, you will train the customer. If the customer needs customer service, you will provide that service. So you have to be available to the customer at all times. And that's how you build a relationship. And that's an opportunity actually to talk to the customer again, to meet him again, to sell to him again, to pitch to him again, and so on and so forth. So these are very basic sort of rules.
The first few employees had this DNA.
Correct.
That you sort of leading by example.
Many employees. Actually, in the beginning, though, first I would say 100, 200, 300 employees had this DNA. And we would regularly sort of meet and party and, we had contests and target, वो सब जो sales में होता है, वो सब चलता था. And of course, we were also up against the wall because, we started losing money. And we had only a few crores left in the bank. And we had serious competition. Our competitor had raised $5 million.
And that was?
Jobs ahead. And within a year and a half of us getting, there was international competition. So Monster came to India. There was a European job board that came to India. There was Job Street from Southeast Asia. They came to India. And they had big bucks. And we were like, yeah, हमारे पैसे खत्म होंगे तो फिर से कहीं मतलब खत्म फिर क्या करेंगे, right? So we had to break even. We had to generate revenue. We had to figure out new things. And so this whole cycle. And we, of course, made a few mistakes. I mean, I don't want to go into the details, but we made lots of mistakes also. But we ultimately got it right. And then it started firing for us because we were hiring. We didn't hire some fancy MBAs from fancy colleges at that time. We said, boss, हम तो 8,000 रुपए, 10,000 रुपए per month देंगे. I'm talking about 2000, 2001. And we realized that within the moment we got the right people, the freshers we were paying 10,000 rupees a month, the managers we were paying 30,000 rupees a month. Within a few months, every sales guy was breaking even. And within 6 months, they were actually, contribution positive. So a guy who was getting paid 10, 12, 14,000 rupees a month, all included, conveyance मिला के maybe 20,000. वो 6 महीने he was doing 50,000 rupees a month. Within 9 months, he was doing 1 lakh a month. Okay, this is
mathematics works, yeah.
Right? So just expand. Of course, you have to get the people right and lots of learnings. The biggest thing which happened actually as a result of the sales effort, and people underestimate the importance of some of these things. Our competition launched a product which was doing really well. So we don't have that product. If we had been sitting in an office, we wouldn't have even known कि वो चल रहा है और बढ़िया चल रहा है. Because we were in the field, customers started telling us, यार आपको ऐसे ही नहीं. Why don't you launch something like this? This is what we need. And it took me a year because we didn't have resources to convince people in our corporate office कि यार ये बनाओ. क्यों वो टेक ही नहीं थे, ये नहीं था, वो नहीं था. कि यार हमारे पास रिसोर्स नहीं है. कि ये चल रहा है boss. And finally we built that product. And today that product accounts for 75% of our revenue in Naukri. That product changed the game. The CVD database. That's what I thought. It did not exist. It did not exist when we got funded.
Very interesting. Okay.
It did not exist. And, all these IT companies in Bangalore were growing like crazy. And they were taking people from India and headhunting and sending them to the US. And they wanted a database. So, yaar, ye apply कोई करता नहीं है. IT में बहुत demand है. See, when there is demand, people don't really have to apply. They get headhunted. Right? यार database दो, हम खुद phone करके निकालेंगे. So that just took off when we launched it. It took us a year to launch. It took us a year to populate it. But once we launched, you had to get CVs and, and then drive penetration, adoption, all that. But when it took off, it just took off. And the fortunes of the company changed. And suddenly it became a very profitable setup, generating high EBITDA margin. And within 3 years of launching the product, we went public. It became so big.
Wow. Till how long did you do sales yourself?
Oh, many years, yeah.
Many
years. Because see, 2001 में हमने end में 2000 end में sales team ने start किया. फिर पहले एक office खोला, फिर Bangalore, फिर Bombay, फिर Pune, Hyderabad, and get people in, then train them, then. So I think I was in the field at least for about 4 or 5 years.
Got it. You have to explain the marketplace dynamic a little bit, right? The chicken and egg problem, classic, right?
Yeah.
So what hatched first in your case? Did you have to crack the B2B deals first, or the traffic on the other side must not have been easy?
SEM की तो story ये है कि when we started advertising on Google, we were the only country in India advertising on Google.
Oh.
So there was a point in time when on every keyword on Google you would see a Naukri.com ad saying post your resume on Naukri.com. भाई
चलो कुछ नहीं है तो करो.
भाई search for Amitabh Bachchan, post your resume on Naukri. Aishwarya Rai, post your resume on Naukri. There was no other advertisers. The only other advertisers were Amazon, eBay, and all these guys from the US. Indian companies
they hadn't. Yeah.
That's how we built our database. A resume database. We sort of understood search engine marketing very early, thanks to somebody who taught us, and we started getting a lot of CVs, and we were behind jobs ahead because by the time we started getting CVs, they already had 3 lakh CVs. We had 0, right? Because they were at least a year and a half ahead, and then we caught up and we overtook them, and luckily for us, they sold to Monster early, and they therefore
got it. Yeah, and that finished.
So we got lucky.
So fast forward today. I mean, it's been 20 years, right? If you had to restart your entrepreneurial journey all over again, right? What industry would you start up in?
What industry?
Yeah, or what kind of a business would you start? If Naukri, fires you tomorrow, the board decides.
I think I'm done. I will go back to, So, but I think our sort of belief has been, as far as doing things are, see, when you're investing, then it's different.
Sure.
Because then you're backing the person you're investing in, and you don't have to know everything yourself. You're going by what the other person knows. But my personal belief has been that you should get into stuff you understand. It's better to do stuff bottom up than top down if you're an entrepreneur. You see, top down में क्या है ना, you look at the market, अच्छा ये हो रहा है, वो हो रहा है, EV करते हैं, ये, I mean that, I don't think that works in my view.
Don't have to follow the trend.
No, I don't think so, because I think, you see, you have to be, very few people make it. When you become an entrepreneur, it's not, startup success rates are low. And in the end, you will succeed at something which you understand better than anybody else. Generally, it's something which you've experienced yourself, or a problem you're facing yourself, which you think, like we were chatting and you said, listen, मैं गया था Wharton and I was not happy with what I saw inside the classroom, this, that. You saw something firsthand, you experienced it. You said, maybe I know how to fix it. And that's why you have what you have today, right? So I think if you go bottom up and you try and solve a problem which you are facing yourself or which you see around you, which you think you have a solution to, and which you think you can perhaps do better than anybody else, that's when your odds of success go.
But if someone is as young as some of us, right, we don't have expertise yet in anything, we've not worked, we're perhaps in first year, second year of college. In that case, how do we decide what our strength is? We haven't explored.
So expertise, I can understand, but what I'm saying is, see, I'll tell you a story. I met a guy many years ago, 25 years ago, from Ireland. So a youngster, like just out of college. And I met him at some conference, right? And he said, I own Ireland's #1 real estate site. It's called daft.e, D-A-F-T, I remember the name. Right? So मैंने कहा, boss, I was 27, 28 years old. He was maybe 22 years old, 23 years old at that time. I said, boss, how did you? He said, yeah, I was sort of looking for a place to rent. मुझे मिलती नहीं थी. तो मैंने हॉस्टल में बैठे बना दी. वो चल गई. Right? It's a problem he experienced. He thought he knew how to solve it. He built a product. He said, डाल दो listing. और वो चल गई. And that business became a very profitable business, very big business in Ireland. And he said, I don't know how to run it also. I don't know how to run it. So you got professional management to run it. You got a CEO who was 50 years old, 45 years old, to run the company for him. I don't know what happened afterwards, but it was very profitable. So again, he saw something which he wanted to solve. Facebook, same story. He didn't set out to say, उस time के मैं virtual reality बनाऊंगा, मैं ये करूंगा, मैं यार मेरे को ये problem है, दिख रहा है ये solution है. This I think will be a hit.
लड़की बनानी है.
College and whatever, right? वो उसे कर दिया, वो चल गई. So I think when you're younger, I think it's even more important. See, once you've seen the world, then you learn a lot of things, and therefore you would have experienced a lot of problems. You would have seen a lot of things succeeding, failing. Your perspective is broader, and therefore you may have higher chances of success in whatever you do. But when you're young, तो और भी मुश्किल है. So if you're better off actually chasing something which you are sort of seeing around you, or which you are facing, or you've seen in your family, or whatever.
Start with the problem that you're facing.
And don't worry about how big it's going to be. Sure. I don't think you should worry about that. Actually, for a long time in Naukri, we never thought Naukri would become big. Right? The business plan we wrote for ICICI, हमने बोला हम 20 करोड़ करेंगे 5 साल में. उन्होंने कहा यार इस पे तो हम फंडिंग नहीं कर सकते. अब ये तो हमारे बहुत स्ट्रेच करके बना रहे हैं, हमें तो यही नहीं समझ में आ रहा कि 1 करोड़ कैसे होगा. ये तो हमें फंडिंग चाहिए. तो हम तो because we were honest, because luckily the market was hot, so we got funded. In the end, we were lucky we beat that plan. Right, but frankly, when you're doing 1.5 lakhs a month and you've been stuck at it for a while, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't even know how you're going to get to 1 crore a month. And then to say कि मैं ये कर दूंगा बहुत मुश्किल है. So my advice to people is start with something you see around you, with some problem you're facing. आपको लग रहा है यहाँ पे housing का कुछ issue है, ये issue है, वो issue है. You know, but you have to be observant. You know, that problem has to bother you, and you should have some idea on how to solve it, right? And then you get into it, and then you build brick by brick.
But what about impact? Like if one of these students were to go, let's say at Swaraj, couldn't they possibly have a much larger impact?
No. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. It's very hard to change things, right?
Fair.
And especially in a big setup, right? Which has been like, see, when you're in a company with a few hundred people or tens of people, you know, you count. You can make a difference. You go as a fresher in a large setup where the average age is 50, or, you know, where people have been around for 20, 30, 40 years. Unless and until you've been brought in
to fix the
problem, you will not be able to change anything. You will not be able to change things. It's very hard. And forget about juniors. I've seen senior people also make this mistake. Even where they've gone in often, sometimes, with the founder saying, "Yaar, boss, mujhe fix karna hai. I want to take a profession." You fix things. After a while, the founder loses interest. He says, "Oh, mere se nahi hota." Yaar, it's too hard. It's too hard. There are people you worked with for years. There is a history. There's a legacy. All kinds of other equations at work. It's not easy. So turnarounds are rare.
Got it.
Are rare. And you want to be where the future is. Now, once you've made it in life, where somebody calls you and says, "Listen, fix this," etc. And if you want to fix, if you have to fix it with a consultant, it's different.
That's different.
Right? That's different. But it's never easy. What do you think? Huh?
I don't know. I feel sometimes I'm a little bit conflicted on this, right? That startups could have great short-term impact on your career. You'll make a lot of money. Salary of your current company becomes a benchmark for your next salary. All of those things help. But sometimes I feel like these companies that have persisted over a period of time, they've grown at 10, 20%, if not at 60% year on year. There is something in their DNA that we could also learn from possibly, right? But if you come from a very selfish point of view, then of course not, right? Your own learning might not be as deep. But from a sustainability point of view, I feel there is some merit. And it also depends on your personality. I think for some of my students, I might actually advise them, hey, for you, first couple of years might actually help to spend in a Swaraj.
So if the company is actually known for investing in people, if the company has a program where they take in freshers and they groom them and they put them in different roles, that's different. Like Hindustan Lever used to do that. It was a big company, but it was known for its management training program. And for the first 12 months, 15 months actually, I was a trainee.
Achha.
And I worked in a factory. I, spent a few weeks in a village. I worked in corporate office. I worked in different cities. I worked in different departments. That was very different. So I learned a lot. And in the end, I've ended up working for a small business within Hindustan Lever, which is very entrepreneurial. Within Hindustan Lever, right? So that was different. But if it's one of those traditional companies where nothing happens and nothing changes, then it's very different.
I worked as an intern at Maruti, right across the street, right, long time ago. And, that's a systematic organization.
What do you get?
They work in systems. And what I learned in those 3 months about developing systems and paperwork and trails and documentation.
See, Maruti is a very solid company. There's a lot I'm sure they do right. They're a market leader in their segment. They're large, right? So that's a different type of setup. Or even, for example, a BCG, right? These are like standard, solid companies. They've been around for a long time. They know how to do it, right? And the training you get is phenomenal, which is very different from joining any random company.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think on the last segment, I want to ask you about a few companies that inspire you, and they should be case studies in these domains, okay? So the first domain is, let's start with branding. Which company inspires you when it comes to branding? And you can't use Zomato.
And you can't use the?
Zomato.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, while I work for Hindustan Lever, and therefore, Hindustan Lever is known for the brands it built. But Hindustan Lever has a portfolio of maybe hundreds of brands. But some of the best brands they have built, Dove. I don't know how many of you are aware of Dove. Okay, big franchise today, right? But some of the best brands have been built by luxury companies. How many people know that today, to buy some of these luxury brands, you actually have to get an appointment?
Yeah, they don't let you come in.
And they're able to sell a shirt for a few lakh rupees. They're able to sell. What is a brand? A brand is something you can command a premium for. People are lining up. They don't care about the price. You could get this, if it's unbranded, you'll probably pay $5,000 for it. But because that label has been put on it, you pay $50,000 for it. That's brand, right? All these Louis Vuittons of the world, they do a terrific job of this. I don't know how it works. I have no experience. The guy who owns some of these brands, he's today the richest guy in the world.
What about when it comes to culture? Which companies do you look up to when it comes to culture?
Regular corporate culture? There are lots of good companies out there. Like I said, the Tatas do a fantastic job. So almost all Tata companies are reasonably well run.
That's also inherited. Someone who's actually built it.
From scratch?
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine, he runs a company here called Nagaro.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they have a very different corporate culture.
Okay.
That I know, because I know him really well. They work very differently from other companies. And I think they've done a very good job. They sort of don't believe in hierarchies. They're sort of very fluid teams and they come together and So unka culture bahut alag hai. So it's a case study. Now, it's very different from how most other companies do it. Amongst the traditional companies, see, one of the things we track very closely is attrition rates, right? And attrition rates basically, tell you how good or bad the company is to work with. So a lot of these MNCs do a very good job. Fantastic job.
They keep their people.
To keep their people. They may not be as aggressive as Indian companies, but they really take care of their employees. Or whether it's a BCG or, one of the headhunting firms, Econ Zender.
Yeah, of
we
course,
used them
yeah.
once. And I was chatting with somebody, they said, boss, we have an attrition rate of 2%. We don't lose anybody. We rarely lose anybody. So some of these MNCs, of course, you may say they pay well or whatever, there are many other things, but they do a very good job of keeping people. And
Do you think there's a trade-off between culture and performance? Like genuinely speaking, like not...
let me answer that
To
question.
an extent.
Yeah. No, so I tell you, so if there is certainly no connection between doing frivolous things for the sake of becoming a great place to work and performance, right? But थोड़ा सा ना ये हो गया, fashion हो गया, कि we have this perk, we have that perk, and therefore we are a great place to work. That's not how it works. For me, culture boils down to what? Are you empowering people? Do you have an open environment? Do you reward performance? Do you hire people and do you give good people responsibility early? So this is what I think a great culture is. It's not कि यार, we have a wine tasting session every Friday. Right? It's not stuff like that.
Correct.
So if you confuse culture with this kind of nonsense, then there is no correlation with performance. In fact, maybe negative. Okay, but if it's about the other stuff I spoke about, yeah, we are data driven, not hierarchy driven. There is massive correlation between culture and performance.
But like, some of the news articles here and there, they always say that, these startups, let's say Zomato, right? There are a few articles that say great culture, people love it, but there's also high attrition, there's also issues with, So I always felt that if a company is gunning after 60%, 70% year-on-year growth, the culture has to break at some point.
Yeah. Culture has to break means what?
Like, people will be dissatisfied, some people will be thrown out, some people will be, they will hate their bosses for pushing them. All of that. Can't be all happy and grow at 60%.
So, it's like this. If people know that 60% is doable, see, one is कि यार जो ज़बरदस्ती की धक्का मार रहे हो, right? And you don't know your backside from your elbow, and you're pushing people in the field. And, if they don't meet the targets, you sack them. Right? That's very different from saying, boss, we run a meritocracy, we reward performance, and there is an opportunity. And if people do well, they'll be rewarded. And if people don't do well, they will not be rewarded. So people want a fair environment. One of the concerns we have in our company also, because we have so many people and we run a performance management process, हमेशा आता है यार कि performance management process is not fair enough, which is the problem. So if people perceive you as being fair, they are okay with it. There's self-selection. The good guys will stay because they know that if they do well, they'll be rewarded. And the people who don't want to work will automatically end up leaving on their own. Right? So you will self-select. The problem starts when you're hustling, when you're pushing people, when you're making them do stupid things, and you don't really know what to do yourself. If there's an opportunity, the product is good, there's a market, there's opportunity, you push people, they'll be happy actually. Because they're growing. And if they grow at 70%, you will also reward them handsomely.
Okay.
And they'll enjoy it. But आपका प्रोडक्ट चलता नहीं है, ठीक है? आप खुद ऑफिस में बैठे हो और धक्के मार रहे हो, वो that doesn't work.
That's fair.
That never works. So in the good old days, I used to be in the field here with people, and we would set stretch targets for our teams, and we would incentivize people very aggressively. And there were people who did really well, and there are people who didn't. And the people who didn't do well, after a while felt, yeah, I'm not doing well, let me find another job. We didn't even have to sack them.
Correct.
We never had to sack anybody. We have never laid off anybody in Naukri till date. And we sack people mostly because of attitude issues. We never sack otherwise. So the people who were doing well, they were like, boss, this is the best company to work with. I'm making much more than market. Why should I go anywhere? And the people who were not doing well, so other people who were doing well and were like, yeah, nahi, this guy has moved ahead, I'm getting left behind, I should find another job. They would leave on their own. People who were not going to the market themselves, who were pushing people, who were stretching, who were setting stupid targets, who were not leading by example, who were not willing to help them, work with them, these things, there you have to change the boss. You don't, otherwise things don't get fixed.
So final question, and next Zomato in your portfolio. What are the three contenders?
No idea.
Which companies are you excited about?
I didn't even know Zomato was going to become so big 3-4 years back. Right, like I told you.
But फिर भी, what are you, which companies do you spend time with now in your portfolio?
See, what used to happen earlier, actually Zomato and Policy Bazaar were our first two investments.
Acha, they were 1 and 2.
1 and 2. And Policy Bazaar is my classmate.
Acha, got it.
From IIT, etc. That's how we knew him. And for some reason, these two have done the best. And in the early years, we used to invest directly from our balance sheet.
Correct.
After COVID, we moved to a fund structure. So now I am actually less involved. Because now we have a AIF structure. So we have some balance sheet investments, they continue. Now in the AIF, we have a partner, Temasek. And there are fund managers in the AIF. So they are the ones who are really investing. And a lot of the investments through the AIF are very recent. They are all 3, 4, 5 years. So it's very hard to make out which one is going to become really big. It normally takes about at least 10 years for a company to get somewhere in India, is what we've seen. From the balance sheet, there are some which are doing well, but will they become the next Zomato? Hard to say. Very hard to say for us today. There are enough which are doing well. There are enough which are breaking even or close to breaking even. There are enough which are growing rapidly. But will any of these companies become a $10 billion company or a $15 billion company? Very hard to say. ये इंटरनेट बिजनेस VC बिजनेस में होता क्या है स्टार्टअप में जो शुरू में अच्छा करती है ना वो बाद में जरूरी नहीं अच्छा करे you know actually you never know right and
late bloomers भी हैं
बहुत हैं like I'm telling you Zomato was not a food delivery company. You know what they did? They went international with their listing model. They went to some 30-40 countries.
China, Europe.
They went and acquired a listings company in the US. And after that, they shut everything down. They were at one point in time, they were in Turkey, they were in Australia, they were in Greece, they were in kahan, they were in the US. They spent $50 million to acquire that company, Urban Spoon.
Correct,
in the US, 50 million. At a time when capital was not so easily available. Right? And then, actually, Swiggy came before them.
Into food delivery.
Swiggy was the first food delivery company, not Zomato. And they came from behind. And they shut everything down and overtook Swiggy. Who could have predicted this?
It's also been 15 years almost, right?
Yeah, it's been 15 years.
15 years.
This is the 16th year, I think. So, hard to say. But there are enough good companies, let me put it this way, in the portfolio. And we made our mistakes also. Baiju, to aapko pata hai. But we had invested in a company called Merit Nation 15 years ago. Same model. Ultimately, it got sold to Baiju.
Yeah.
Because it got sold to Akash, which got sold to Baiju. So it ended up inside Baiju. But we invested in that company in 2008, 9, 10.
Got it.
Right? So it's all about timing.
It's anybody's guess.
Yeah, very hard to say. And it's a few decisions you take which make all the difference. In the end, is what I've seen. See, once the company reaches a certain level, it's different. Right? But in the early days, in the early years, till you make it, I've seen, from my experience and even from Zomato's experience and even from policy experience, वो 4-5 decisions होते हैं, which if you get wrong, like Zomato, if they had not done food delivery, God knows what I don't know whether they would have existed even.
और क्या करते हैं?
Right? If they get Blinkit wrong, right? Who the hell knows, yeah? Even today, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to do is certainly tell you that these are the companies who make it.
Recording Fair. No, but sir, thank you so much for your time and for being so, honest and open with us. Really appreciate it.
Useful, huh?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. Right. Thank you so much.